All right, guys, here we go. Power just came back on, middle of the hurricane. Trying to see if we can pass on a brief for some hurricanes. I don't know. I'm a father. If that wasn't funny, it's because I got dad jokes. Here we go. Fitness and sport. It's going to be part one, 6x6 box jump, starting at a little bit lower of a height and progressing a little bit higher each set, right? So on your first set, a little bit of a warm up. Next set, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, continually getting a little bit higher. But 6 is right at that point where it's starting to get a little bit outside of your ability to be explosive. So make sure it's something that's doable as you're working your way up, right? About 40-second rest in between rounds. And then part 2 is going to be 4 rounds of 15 kettlebell swings. You can either go Russian or American, either way. 10 over the kettlebell burpees, which for surprising reasons, maybe just the height, the setup, sometimes can be a little harder than over the bar burpees. So you get you 15 kettlebell swings, 10 over the kettlebell burpees, and then 5 toes to bar, right? So a little bit in there, grip might get a little bit tired. If it is, it probably shouldn't be after the burpees, but if it is, then you can always sub out, do some V-ups on the ground or something you don't want to peel on the pull-up bar. 30-second rest between rounds, keep it moving, have some fun. Part 3, 4x15 reverse hypers, right? And one of the things on these hypers is make sure you're not just kicking back with your legs, but arching and flexing through that spine, building up all those erectors, stretching that back out. Part 4, lag and muscle. Part 5, mobility majors. Power and iron up. Part 1, the same thing we already talked about here. And then as we progress over for part 2, you got 3 to 4 rounds, right? Player's choice of 140-foot backwards sled drag. So you're going to try to sit down into it a little bit, climb your way back, use your quads, use your glutes, and then a 200-foot side shuffle, which should really shoot your heart rate up, but it's such a outside a normal movement pattern because it's so laterally based that it's going to help keep you nice and balanced, athletic, and safe in the long run. So you might not feel it a ton when you first start. Then all of a sudden you're like, man, my back's getting a little flexed up, my glutes are getting flexed up, legs. So sit down into it, side shuffle from one side 100 feet, side shuffle 100 feet back the other way, and then as many reps as possible, goblet, quad squats. So for the quad squat, if you will, you can put a plate underneath your heel, hold onto a goblet nice and tall, set up this position, or if you don't feel like doing that, then no sweat, you can just do it on the ground. But regardless, what's going to probably happen without something under your heel is the breaking point will be a little bit more kind of in the low back hamstring region than it will be in the quads. Either way, remember, you front end pulled with the quad, so it's kind of a little bit of over quad super destroyer at times, but you could always put your heel on the ground just the same. Another way you can sub this out would be to put a light barbell on your back. And now here's the deal. If you got a light barbell on your back, you do not want to go to true failure. You probably don't want to go to true failure with a goblet quad squat either. So just make sure that it's a very stimulated as many reps as possible. I got a lot of reps in, my legs got hot, they're good to go, but I'm not going to fall over in the middle of my last rep. Rest in 1 minute between rounds. Part 3, 4 to 5 rounds of 15 box hamstring curls. Put the heels up on a box, grab a hold of rings, laying down, and think about pulling the box towards your glutes, even though your glutes are going to go towards the box, going to give you a better hamstring activation. Then 10 back extensions after that. So hammies are already going to be hot, definitely going to get biased in the back. Get you a good round, good full straightening, good round, good full straightening, get that full range of motion. Remember, if we don't build up the end ranges of the spine, the low back and the neck specifically, then when they're challenged and asked to do difficult things, that's where most of your injury comes in. So make sure you build them up through time, you get a lot of volume, you build the tendons up, the muscles get strong, and then when you're doing heavy things like squats and deadlifts, you're gonna be good to go. All right. Lag and muscle, if you want a mobility major, if you need it, TDY, the dumbbells, y'all. Same thing we talked about here. You could always sub this out for some tuck jumps or something along those lines if you don't have a box to jump on. Part 2, 3 to 4 rounds, same thing, except you're going to do a backward loaded backpack drag, right? If you have a sled, you can do a sled. If you have a backpack, you put it down as long as you're not going to tear it up. You're on some grass, you're on something that you're not too worried about. You can drag anything. You can drag a tire, right? You can tie a rope around a tire, squat down into it, like an old tire off your vehicle on a funny, on a different medium that would make it difficult to drag on. Whatever you want to do, but we're trying to sit down into it. If you don't have that, you could probably just do a low glute bear crawl, work your hamstrings for, 200 feet, 140 feet, somewhere in there. Then you got 200-foot side shuffle, AMRAP goblet squats like we already talked about, except you're going to just be holding a dumbbell unless you have a kettlebell, in which case you can hold your kettlebell. Rest 1 minute between rounds. Part 3, 4 to 5 rounds, 15 dumbbell hamstring curls, very similar, right, in what we're working there. And then you got 10 seated dumbbell deadlifts. And the same thing we talk about with the back extension, where you're sitting down and you got the dumbbell sitting against your shins. Get a good round over, straighten it back up. Try to keep your belly against your thighs the whole time. 1 minute rest between rounds like a muscle if you want it. Stay safe, stay dry for all you guys in the panhandle, everybody else. Chase those gains. Hoo-yah, never quit.